today's our topic is achieve consistency in API. How we will achieve the consistency and what are the measures we will be following. Also, the advantages of consistency we'll be covering today. So, about myself, hello everyone. It's me, Sanjok Gyawali, currently working as a senior software engineer at here Spiralogics, and also I'm pursuing bachelor's in computer engineering. Also, I'm actively involved in various social and political organizations. So let's begin. So today we'll be covering a topic like definition of API consistency, advantages of maintaining consistency in API, error handling, naming convention, version management and backward support, depreciating strategies and documentation. Let's begin. So actually what is API consistency? So API consistency means API behaves predictably across various situations. It offers reliability and uniformity, adding developers in trusting its consistent behaviors across different contexts, simplifying integration into application. While we maintain the consistency, it will help a developer to better understand the code, how the error has been handled, how we are using their resetting strategies, how version are maintained, and everything across the API. So advantages of having consistency in API. It will help in the enhanced user experience as it is in the familiar pattern and behavior. API consistency will help to enhance user experience so that user can easily understand how the API are responding, how the API will work, and etc. Also, it will reduce the learning curve. They don't have to learn each API how it will work, how we need to add the request and response. Even we only know the format how we will be doing, but we don't have to learn how that API will behaves. Also, it will help in the lower error rates. There will be very low error because while making the consistency we will be handling each errors and other things. Also, we will be compliance with the security and everything. Also, it will be easier to maintain because we if we change in one part in the API, in one part of the API, that is scalable and change to other part as well. It will help in the faster development. We will have the faster and better development collaboration will be there, so that since it is in the consistency phase, so it will help developer to understand fast. It will help developer not to think of more thing on the so it will help in the faster development. Also, it will provide the better collaboration between the team members since API is consistent. How it will work is also consistent, so it will provide a better collaboration with the team. Also, it will provide the scalable API so that it will be easier and scalable API will be generated. Also, it will provide the compatibility with the different front-end libraries, client-side libraries, and it will be compatible other type of APIs because it has the consistency. And also, it will provide different security measures and it is compliance and many more other there are different other advantages of having the consistency in API. So first way of achieving the consistency is error handling. It is the most efficient way for achieving the consistency. So how the error will be handled, how the exception will be handled, runtime maximum runtime errors are being handled in the while making the consistency API. So we use different possible ways for error handling. First possible way is we use the status code. So, okay, we will use a proper HTTP status code to signify API request outcomes. Like common codes for are 200 for success, 400 for client errors, 500 for server errors. Adhere to standard status code for consistency. As you can see on the right, there are different status code like 200, 301, 302, 303, 401, 404, 402, and other different status code we are using so that it will be consistent, so that the developer will understand how what is the issue, what is the errors are coming, and how we can solve it, so it will be easier for developer to understand. Also, we'll provide the consistent error responses like format error responses consistently. We use like JSON. You can see on the left panel, we are using error as resource not found. This means the one message of the consistent and code as 404. So not found code is resource not found code is 404. So we will provide a consistent error responses so that everybody on each API, if there is something error comes up, if it is success, we'll provide the success and similar kind of responses. If it is failed due to some reason, exceptions like 404 which was not found or any other type of status code will provide a consistent so that developer will be easily understand what the error are mean to be sent. So we'll have the consistency error handling, and also we'll provide the custom exception. We'll develop custom exception types inheriting from exception class for consistency error handling in our API. So we use public class not found exception as a class which are inherited by exception, and we use a method not found exception and string message. We'll pass the custom exception like sometime we need to make the custom exception for each exception to be handled so that developer can understand. So we will use the custom exception type to achieve the consistency. So also we will use the centralized exception handling. If you can see here, so we are using as app as use as exception handler error app error app dot run, and this is the centralized way of making the exception handling. So we implement centralized exception handling like ASP.NET Core and middleware to catch and convert unhandled exception into uniform error responses. It will help the developer to achieve the consistency on the API, and it will also provide the exception for entire API so that it will not be issue and it will not be necessary to make like error handling like develop the error handling on each API. So another way of achieving consistency is we will use the global error handling. We'll apply global error handling in API controls by overriding controller based on exception for consistent exception handling without within controllers. So if you can see on the left panel of my page, we use public class base controller and controller base. We'll provide on exception override, and so that we can override our exception and it can be used globally within the application. So it will be easy to maintain the consistency for handling the error. So another way of achieving consistency is naming convention. We use proper format for naming convention. In the C Sharp, we use Pascal case for classes, types, and public methods, properties, and events, and camel case for variable and parameters. Also, you use verb noun for methods, consistent prefix or suffix, and namespace naming in a proper format and constants in a proper format. So let's begin with that. So as you can see on the right side at the top, we are using classes as Pascal case and interface and delegates in the Pascal phase. Also, we use Pascal case for public methods, properties, and events. And we are using camel caching for, you can see on the last picture, there is variables, we are using the camel caching. But for the public methods, we are using the Pascal caching. This is how Pascal cases and camel cases are maintained in the C Sharp application. So we use consistent prefix and suffix for interface and abstract classes. If we use interfaces or abstract classes, consider using consistent prefix or suffix to indicate their purpose. Like we use I in front of interface, and we use a base service, a similar kind of for abstract, and we use other type of similar type of prefix and suffix we can use for different type of methods so that it will be easy for everybody to understand how the system is behaving, how the system will work, and etc. So we use namespace naming. We follow a constant pattern for naming namespace and use the project or company name as a root namespace. We use our company name like your company, you can see there, and product as the another component, and module for the component. So we use a proper namespace naming so that it will be easy to understand how the namespace are being triggered so that we can implement the namespace in different areas. Also, API will be more consistent and it will help in the backward support and other things. Okay, we use uppercase with the underscore for constant value. If you can see max underscore item underscore count, we use max underscore item underscore count, where underscore is separated with the different words, and we use capital case for all those variable names. So we this is the most proper way of making the constants so that every API will have a similar approach for retrieving the constant and variables. So version management means the one of the efficient way of achieving API consistency in C Sharp, which involves systematic management and control of different version of an API to ensure that changes and updates do not disrupt existing integration. It will also help in the backward support, also in the depreciating strategy. We use different version management technique for managing the versions. So we use first we use semantic versioning. Semantic versioning means you can see on the example 1.0.0, where 1 means the major changes, first 0 means the minor changes, and second 0 means the patch. So whenever we are having a new version, we will update. If it is major changes, we will make 1 to 2. If it is minor changes, we will make 1.1, or if we are adding the patch, we will make 1.1.1. So it will easy to track and manage the app. So we will have the API contracts where how the request will be there and what are the responses will be there on each version. We'll make a contract, and we'll also provide a version in URL, like you can see API slash b1. B1 means version 1, and API slash b2 slash resources, where b2 means version 2. Also, we use API documentation for the version management, where each version are documented in proper way, which API are in that version, which API are being depreciated, which API are being used, made, or anything else. Also, we use different version strategy like URI versioning, header versioning, or media type versioning. We use different version control software like a Git and other type of software to handle application to handle the version and have the change log in a proper format. We also use URL routing for the different version management. Like if we route from the a proper URL, we will go to the that version and provide that API to us. And we also use the namespace versioning, like your company dot version name dot something module name. So that will help in the version management as well. So backward software in software or tech means maintaining compatibility with older version or configuring ensuring that existing system or interaction based on earlier specs work as intended post updates. Like after the we provide the post updates, we use backward support to check if the post updates has any changes on the existing system or not. If it is existing system, we use different techniques like versioning techniques and different techniques for to go to the back support and provide the proper reasoning why it is have been changing, and we will provide the back support so that it will not affect to the existing system. Also, we can fix that in the production only. So versioning will be a best possible way for the best back, backward support. So depreciating strategy, this is also one of the way of achieving consistency in API. We use different depreciating strategies, such as we use depreciation notice, absolute attribute versioning, where depreciation notice means we provide a different notice to the developers who are using the API when it will be depreciating, how we will be depreciating, how it will be like replaced, how we can have the replacement API as well if they are using it efficiently or anything like we can give in the notices. So another way of depreciating strategy is obsolete attribute. We'll add annotation as obsolete if that API is depreciated. So we will provide obsolete annotation, which will help for the developer to understand if it is depreciated or not. We'll use different versioning technique. Like in different version, we'll be starting depreciating our APIs on different version. Like in the 1.0.0, we will have certain level of depreciation. In second version, we'll have the certain level of depreciation, so that it will be easier to get the customer feedback. Also, if the customer are using that, they will be known about that depreciation strategy, and it will be easier for the customer to make the changes. Also, we use different support and documentation while making the depreciating strategy. Like we provide documentation if these are being depreciated soon, and we will have to be replaced by this type. So we will provide different documentation for this, and also we'll get the community engagement. Like we get the feedback if that depreciating is good or not. Also, API will be consistent. How the API we can be make consistent of if the user are using or not, or how they are being using maintaining those. So we will have the that depreciation community engagement. Also, we'll provide the depreciation timeline, like when it will be going to be depreciated, like timeline, and when it will be replaced, when developer can start to replace those APIs in their production environment or anything else. So we use migration guides, like how we'll be depreciating those changes, sorry, those APIs, and how we'll be depreciating those things. So we'll have the migration guidance. Also, we'll have the testing and validation. Since while in the depreciation phase, user might be using those APIs. So at that time, we should have the testing and validation properties being make the proper strategy for that, so that it will be easy for the to make the consistent. So a developer will have reliable on our APIs. Also, we'll provide a feedback channel, so that developer can have the some feedback while we are depreciating something, like this should not be depreciated or something else. They will provide different feedbacks if replacement is working as perfect or not, anything else similar type of things. Also, we'll have the monitoring of the system in the depreciation phase, if that is having some issue or not in the development side, or anything developer are facing those issue or not. So we will be checking on the depreciation strategies. These strategies will help to achieve the consistency in the API. So documentation. So we will have the different documentation technique for to achieve the consistency. First documentation technique is we will make the API design guidelines. Documentation will help to know how the API will behave, how the API will be formatted, how we can request, how we can respond, and everything. So it will help to achieve the consistency in the API. So first point is API design guidelines. We'll have the API design guidelines, how we will be making, how we will be request are maintained, what type of request we are getting, what type of response we are getting. So we will have some guideline, so it will be easier for the developer to understand how the API are being used. So we will also have the endpoint documentation, different endpoints documentation, like how endpoints are working, which are the requests that are being used, like we'll have the API slash b1 slash something. So we'll provide those endpoint documentation to the developers, so that they can understand how it will be working. Also, we'll provide the authentication and authorization, how we can authenticate or authorize to the user. Like example, we use OAuth 2.0 or any other software security measures or anything. We'll provide them in the documentation only, so that they can easily communicate with the like API. Like we also provide the API keys and other thing on the documentation. We also provide them the versioning, like which versioning APIs they are being used, like API slash b1 or API slash b2 or anything. So that will be documented. Every versioning will be also documented. Also, we'll provide the error handling, different error handling functions, how error are being handled, how status code are being given, how consistent error are being made, how centralized error are being triggered, so that they don't have to worry about the errors. And if they come across to the error, they will have the clear definition for that. Also, we provide them the different data formats, like how the request and response being sent, and how what are the data formats they will have, what are the data types we will have. So we'll provide them in the documentation. Also, we'll provide the rate limiting and quotas, like in the polygons we have 100 limits, like in the free, like example 10 limit, we have 10 limit of request and response. We'll provide them in the documentation only. Also, we'll provide them request and response example, how what are the format we'll be providing, what are the request we'll providing, like ID colon 2 and name colon something. We'll provide of proper example, so that developer will be easy, feel easy to communicate with the API. Also, we'll provide SDKs and library, also change log as well. So what are the SDKs being used? We'll provide it will help consistently the API. Like they need what are the SDKs they need to communicate with the API, what are the libraries will they need to communicate with the API. And also it will provide the change logs, what are the change logs are being made in the different versions and etc. So we'll also provide the how security are being considered, like what are the security authentication and authorization technique we are using, what are the security practice we are using, and different other type of things. Also, we'll provide the examples and tutorials, like how the API are being used, how the examples, how to use it, how what type of request we are getting, what type of response we are getting. It is either get request or post request or put request will be, everything will be documented in a proper format. Also, we will provide the feedback and support, like the developer will have the some feedback, and we will provide the support in different phases of the development cycle. Also, so it will help documentation will help to achieve consistency in API. Thank you. If you have any queries or anything, like if you have any feedbacks, So feel free to communicate here.